Good, well let's now lead on to the final process, which is called control risks. As is normal, this process occurs within the monitoring and controlling process group. And risks, like anything else, aren't normally static. And why risks need to be controlled? Because new risks may be identified and you need to respond to them as they occur. However, also existing risks may change in their nature. For example, they might become more or less probable, or the impact may change or become greater or less than originally thought. However, another common aspect of controlling risks is that the responses you put in place do not have the desired effect, and therefore control action is needed to align the management of risks for the project back to what was originally planned within the risk management plan itself. So plans have to be reassessed and evaluated to see how the plan is lining up with your reality, and here we're talking about with regard to risks, and making changes when and if needed. Let's check out the inputs. We'll see our old friend the risk register, which of course plays a significant part here in that it'll need to be updated in keeping with your current reality. But also, of course, the list of risks within this should be reviewed to make sure that they were identified properly and that the responses chosen were appropriate. And as an input, we can use that to relate what's actually occurring versus what was originally planned. The project management plan, because as we take any actions, we need to compare this to what was originally planned. And as part of deciding exactly what control actions are needed, we need to compare this with the plan to see what the impact may be. Work performance data, because this gives us information on risks and how such work is being carried out, and as such will give us clues and assistance in taking appropriate control actions. In a similar way, the work performance reports, which were derived from work performance data being converted into information, and reports normally have much higher level metrics such as percentages and actual remaining hours and so on and so forth. So work performance data gives you helpful information related to all aspects of the project budget, project schedule and project scope, for example, whereas the work performance reports shows you how the work was done or carried out. Let's look at the outputs, quite a few here. As a result of carrying out any control actions on the risks and using the work performance data on the input, we can produce the work performance information after appropriate analysis within the control risk process. Various parts of the project management plan will need to be updated. For example, cost and schedule baselines, and quite naturally change requests are an important output here from control risks. You see, as risk events actually occur, or indeed do not occur, and are not likely to occur, the project may need to be changed as a result of this. And this in and of itself could impact any part of the project management plan. Project document updates. This would mainly refer to updating the risk register, as I've mentioned several times already, as due to actual occurrences, some of the risk-related data and analysis may need to be modified in the light of real experience. In a very similar way to many of the control processes here, it's an opportunity for the project manager to learn from what has actually happened and to add value to any assets that have been used within the risk management knowledge area, and therefore update it with any ideas or extra fields or modifying or refining techniques used, and so on and so forth. And don't forget, of course, this project characteristics and what actually occurred in relation to control risks, for example, which actions worked, which didn't work so well, can be added to lessons learned for future projects and act as an asset for projects that have yet to occur. Checking out the tools. I'm going to cover all of these in the next slide, so we'll work through them then. Please note that there are 6 in total. Let's deal with them one at a time, starting with risk reassessment. Now, over the life of the project, as I've mentioned already, risks can change. Maybe they become more or less likely, or maybe the impact changes, higher, lower, or the impact is different in some way. Also, new risks may emerge that could not have been known about when carrying out the various risk processes within the planning process group. So therefore, risk management needs to be updated so that it can be kept current and accurate. This is what this particular tool is all about. And of course, the risk register is a vital reference here, as it will give data on the current status of all risks, and by the very nature of it, help you to identify new risks that have emerged that need to be added to the register and perform qualitative risk analysis and perform quantitative risk analysis be carried out on them. Risk audits. These focus on overall risk management and by the very nature are top-down. Periodic risk audits evaluate how the risk management plan is working, along with whether the identified risks are actually occurring. Like most audits, these should be seen as a great opportunity for an independent view to be taken on the overall risk management. And the fact that they are independent can often give a new set of eyes and spot situations or trends that the team, including the project manager, may not have noticed. It's also quite refreshing that after a risk audit to be given a clean bill of health so that it gives you added confidence that the way in which risk management is being carried out is the best way for this particular project. Variance and trend analysis. This is looking at what was originally planned and what was actually executed. So it's comparing planned against actual and looking at variances between those two and looking at what was planned and what is forecast, again with a focus on the variances. Trend analysis shows how performance is trending. Trend information allows corrective action to be undertaken if needed. Now we are talking here about risks. So with regard to this tool within the control risk process, we'd be looking at trend analysis on risks. In the next and final slide, I'm going to show you how it's quite normal and natural that the total risks on the project are greatest at the beginning because nothing has been done about them. But as you approach the end of the project, risks will be minimised since we've carried out all of the activities, created the products, and there won't be too many remaining. Always some, of course, called residual risk, which we'll look at again in the next slide. But here, for example, you could check that indeed risks generally are reducing, and if not, identify what the reason for that is, and that root cause analysis will help, as I've said here, corrective action to be undertaken. Technical performance measurement. As its name suggests, this looks at the technical or functional parts of the project and reviews technical accomplishments, for example products that have met their acceptance criteria, against the planned schedule of technical achievements. In other words, are we where we plan to be? And if not, determine again by root cause why not, and what are we going to do about it to bring it back on track. As it says here, looking at the deviation in terms of functionality or products can help forecast the degree of success the project is achieving at this point in time and give the project manager an opportunity to actually refine and hone that to bring the project back on track if indeed the variances don't look good. Reserve analysis, another name for this is the Risk Contingency Fund. You'll recall I talked about that as one of the responses. It is evaluated to assure management that it is still sufficient. What happens in reserve analysis is looking at the original reserve put by, looking at risks that actually happened and that needed to utilise some of that funding, looking at risks that would still use it but have yet to happen, and determining whether the reserve analysis is still appropriate. You may need to increase it or decrease it if some or more of the linked risks actually didn't occur. Consider this. If there's still money there, then this will refer to potential activities that have yet to be implemented and to use this funding. Therefore, there may be an impact on schedule. If, for example, the number of risks to use contingency are still significant, but none of them have occurred yet, then we need to look at if they should all need this money, will this also have an impact on the future schedule of the project? And finally, meetings. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have risk-related meetings, although that might be appropriate in certain high-risk projects. What it's actually referring to is that when you have progress status meetings, talking generally about the project and its progress, schedule, cost, quality, scope and so on, that you should include within those meetings an agenda item of discussing the risk status, and that is quite a sensible thing to do. Just coming off topic for a moment, the regular management reports that will need to be circulated at key points should also include risk status within them.